Hello everyone, welcome. It's Karen with the Star Card Tarot and I'm coming with messages. I thought I'd almost do like a part 2 of the diagrams that I was doing the other day about thought into form. There was more that came. So I'm gonna show you my notes, show you what came to me, and we'll pull a few cards, more of like oracle cards, not so much tarot tonight, but just something for guidance. We're moving through some heavy transits. Holy smokes. Yeah, yesterday I was pretty emotional about the end of Uranus into Aries, Uranus switching over into Taurus. It really affected me. I was realizing a lot of what Uranus brings and what it teaches us. And it's a lot of surprise, a lot of things where you think there's stability and there's non-stability, which really got me thinking about contrast, and that specifically had to do with the process of thought into form. So as I was getting ready, I was picking up my little figurine here of Ganesh, this little one right here. So wonderful. This one I found, it came to me. Sometimes I hold on to it. It's very weedy. It grounds me out. So I was holding on to it and I was meditating a little bit before I started. And it really occurred to me, Ganesh is often, say in a nutshell, it's described as the remover of obstacles. And I really was deconstructing that. And it's not so much the obstacles, but the resistance of the things that we have in our life. So I'm going to backtrack it back to this little image here I drew, and I was describing this as the first manifestation. It's the same as this image, and it's also the same as this image. So the process is there's infinite possibility, and see all those little fragments, and then when those fragments start clustering and organizing together and grouping together with thoughts, you get your idea. And then once you get your ideas and you attach an emotion to it, you can manifest and all those kind of things. So anyhow, at any rate, I wanted to go back to this. So if this is the spiritual realm, this is the physical realm. Again, there's that invisible line of a mind. Once it goes from thought into idea, thought into form, and it has to start with those little fragments, and they cluster together until it actually becomes form into a 3D tangible thing. So it goes from no thing into a thing. So going back to this diagram here was another way how to look at it. We all see things from different perceptions, and it was just another way how to deconstruct and look at it. So I was talking about 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, and in my last video I was talking about, wow, I was noticing there was a big difference from 1D, which would be like a point, 2D would be traveling or along a plane, in different directions or whatever, but like just very flat, two-sided. And I was noticing, wow, there's a really big, big jump from a line into a form. And that was what I was talking about in the last video. But what's so cool and what's so interesting is there's always patterns repeated. So I want to talk about before 1D, before just a point or a perspective. There's 0, right? and when I reference 0 is when I'm, say, talking about the diagram and I'm putting my hand in the air as if there's nothing up here, and then it's getting to down there. So that's what I was really zoning in on, about 0 to the 1D, and that's that really big jump, same like how we see over here. How did nothing get even into something, right? So let's go here. I don't know if this will show up. Okay, so I was doing a really quick little draw up of just those little thoughts, and then how they cluster and form into a thing. But say if we took a microscopic look of what's going on over here, you see all those particles. And again, you know, they're vibrating, moving in all the different directions, however that happens. And they would either meet each other or pass by each other or meet each other and resist each other or bounce off each other. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the contrast. The contrast is actually what forms like no thing, 0, nothing, spirit, no one and no place, no time, no where, into one thing. And so I had some where is it? Here we go. I had some messages that came in. I got the song Tone Loc, Wild Thing, Wild Thing, that came in. I got that you can't be aware of yourself without contrast. I got the song Don't Stop, but the words you can't, you won't, and you don't stop by the Beastie Boys. I got just being in your body and your individual perception is contrast. So this light body that we're in, that we inhabit, this thing right here, this is contrast. So that's why it's vital to us. Sometimes we look at contrast as if it's a tragedy or if it's a bad thing. Yeah, there's sometimes where it doesn't feel good, but it is vital. It's contrast shows us. It's how we're able to be a spirit form in this world and perceive. So let's see if I can fold this up for you guys and do a little close-up. I don't know if this will show up again. I got to start doing these in markers. So I just did an image of a face, like a side profile, and it's observing and it's seeing a flower versus a face perceiving nothing. So when we are looking and observing things, when we see something, even when we perceive something visual, that's still a contrast. Because if we were looking out and there was no thing to look at, we wouldn't even know that we really kind of like existed or something like that, right? And so it was when we are, even when we're noticing or looking at something, that's actually validating back to us that we are in form. I also got, pull this out here. My friend and I, Scarlett, She's a super cool, super woke friend of mine. She's actually in the middle of writing a super cool book. We'd been discussing contrast, but she was bringing up the image of the yin yang. That came to me recently too, and in relationship to contrast. Well, we know light and dark, the polarities, masculine, feminine, good, bad, all that stuff. So even in that image, it's the light to dark or the dark to light, and either way it is contrast. So it came to me to really embrace the contrast. You are the contrast. And what's so interesting about this image of the yin yang, it's very much like magnetics. Just go like this, fake color it in, and maybe I should have did this preparing beforehand. And I'm feeling like Bob Ross or Mr. Dress Up over here. Whatever, anyways, it's fun. So, for any topic that we're in, if we move, say, in a direction, of one thought or one idea, if we stay there too long, it's eventually the tides are going to turn and it's going to change into a new topic. So, say this was love and say this was fear. If you are, or say if this was joy and this was pain, say. If you are in joy so much, you're feeling the emotion of joy so much, and you experience that joy so much, you would eventually get to a point where that joy actually turns into pain. Or say if you were in pain so much and you were feeling and experiencing that pain so much, you would actually get to that point of joy. I was thinking about those statues that they have down at English Bay at Morton Park, where they have that really beautiful artwork of the laughing statues. And I went looking at it. I felt inspired to go look at the artist, and he's very, very, very significant fella, and he's got a lot of pieces about that. So he was, in his artwork, he was explaining the similar thing that, if you're in so much pain and you're feeling that pain, the only thing that could happen when you continue to feel that pain is that you get into a point where you're in so much pain that you have laughter. There's nothing left to do, right? So one really needs the other. It's vital. And we often get really caught up in that. And again, if we didn't have contrast, if we didn't have those molecules and different things bouncing off each other, and if they were missing each other, we would still be no thing. We'd still be in spirit form. This body is an example, a living testament of why contrast is so vital and so important. So the one thing about that is, it's not necessary, is resistance to contrast. So again, contrast is vital for us. So we, say if we put out an idea, and in order for that idea to even become a thought, there has to be contrast. In order for that thought to come into form, there has to be contrast. But it's our resistance to it, right? And the key I'm noticing is once you can identify where your resistance is, then you can go on that path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is going to be the easiest flow. Electricity takes on that quality. Just one second. Electricity takes on that quality. Water takes on that quality. Water moves to the path of least resistance, and it always fills in any void. So if there's like ground and there's holes in it, water doesn't just go past the hole, it fills it up, right? So really, really, really interesting element. But it again, like, we don't necessarily need to go finding teachers and gurus and spend years of reading books and studying. Once you align with source, you get these answers, right? And that's another path of least resistance. So I also wanted to introduce this here. Oh wait, actually there was another one. Kind of like similar idea with the contrast. I wanted to show about magnets. So you can control the direction and the flow forward or expansion in your life. So say if you wanted to, pretend that's forward. So say if there's a topic and there's always going to be a negative and a positive end to that, you can effectively move that energy forward if you're not over on one side or the other of it. So again, I'll just quickly go over these. So the cool thing about the alignment and not getting too caught up in the negative or the positive, we associate contrast with negative. It doesn't have to be. If you think of a magnet and say you're thinking about, the positive aspects of some topic, and you're really fixated around this end of it, well, if there was a direction, and if you're coming from this side of it, it's going to go, say, more of in an arc going that way. If you were fixated on a topic and you say you were more hanging out in this, the negative side, over, this spectrum of, you would be going more the push or whatever, the arc would be, you'd be going more of in a circle that way. You just basically, you're going to go in circles if you go to extremes of any topic. So one of those keys I'm noticing is if you can kind of find the middle ground, and understand that, that there's no like right or wrong or good or bad. And if you have a topic that you're having contrast and it's not, it's an obstacle, and if you can transmute the negative or the positive and kind of hold a middle ground, then you're going to be able to move with the natural flow and have forward motion. So that was cool, and that was fine and dandy. And then all of a sudden I got this really cool transmission or download or whatever about, we're going to talk about the black hole. Black holes. So this might be a abstract way how to look at it. So I drew this image, and I kind of want to, I'll darken it up a little bit. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Tesla and those numbers, numerology, and the 369, and all of those, and the tetrahedrons, right? Like, kind of makes that donut shape. So what came to me was, say if we're looking in space, and as in our 3D vision with our 3D eyes, and what we can perceive is a lot different from say a first, I'll say a fourth, fifth, sixth dimension. We're seeing things a lot different because we're only seeing things within a certain realm of form. We're not seeing it from outside of that form. So say if in our universe we're moving towards a black hole, I was thinking back to that contrast, and it came to me about, like, okay, so, well, what if on this end it's parallel to way down over here, and if we're doing that donut shape through the sea of the galaxy, the big waters, and our motion is forward, but if we're able to do that natural moving back, so it's just, again, that space returning to its own space, that's what's propelling us through space, is that motion. And I was thinking about, that must be the natural way that we're having our movement, in the macro, or how we're getting along through the sea of the galaxy. So here was kind of like a side vision or side version. So say if we're looking at it exactly from the side, and say that was indicating a black hole, that was the parameter of it. Say if this is the collective body, and I'm not saying it's solid mass, but that's just, like, say, the form. If the form is only moving forward in one direction, with the magnetic pull, or however it's going, if it's only going in that forward motion, how is this whole mass going to be able to get into that tiny little hole? I would assume or imagine that if this whole form was moving in a forward direction, it would either, and if this would be like a wall, I feel like that mass would hit it, or it would get squished up against it, might even fractal outwards and break off, or whatever. But, again, continuing in that form of that donut shape, that tetrahedron shape, that say if there was a little black hole here, if we're moving forward, but doing the thing of contraction, expansion, and that really went along with contrast. We need the contraction and expansion. I always had a hard time to understand what is contraction and expansion. That was a law of the universe. I thought, is that something small and then get big, and then small and then big? Like, there's a lot of ways how to decipher that. But the image that came to my mind is, like, say, if it was a donut shape traveling forward, well, if it was going in that forward motion, and it only had to make it through a small little opening, which is itself, but that's a whole other video. But if it's moving that way, and there's the ability to space to go back within its own space, you know, something moving forward and moving out of itself, returning to itself, you know, moving out, returning. Well, then I think there would be success for it to be able to pass through, even though it's wider than the black hole. So it was basically the understanding of that there would actually be no separation here. That was just an example. That it's that motion forward. It's a propelling forward, and that I was noticing that just by that motion and that constant returning to the originations of space, going within itself, traveling through, going outside of itself, traveling through, you know, and we would actually have to bring the entrance here and the entrance points here. So that was wild and wicked and super cool. So that was the messages coming through. So I wanted to, actually give me a second. I wanted to pull a couple cards, not tarot tonight, but I was wanting for oracles. I was inspired for that. And I was going to look at a few of these ones. These are manifesting luck. So if there's any kind of messages for all of us regarding resistance, if there's anything for messages for us to know about resistance and how to allow and not resist so much. So here's one. It says, I nurture my personal power. It says, when I recognize and acknowledge my personal power, I no longer need to feel superior or inferior to anyone. Well, that's kind of obvious. Oh, Captain Obvious card over here. When I recognize and acknowledge my personal power, I no longer need to feel superior or inferior to anyone. Any more messages? That'll help us with resistance. With every new experience, I become something new. It says, with every new adventure in life, whether it's a new job, a new relationship, a new friendship, or a new environment, I grow and am transformed. And I'll do one more. This one says, I honor the silent observer. It says, my silent observer transcends my individual identity. It is the witness that was there before I was born and will be there after I die. Those seemed a little bit abstract, but you never know, you know. You never know. We're all extensions of Source, making our way, doing our own thing. So I thought I would pull some of these cards. These ones just have the images. And I'll pull one for the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable signs. And this will be if there's, you know, when we're experiencing contrast, we have to recognize and identify where's the resistance. So once we can neutralize, like that magnet, neutralize that resistance, we have forward motion. So for the cardinal signs, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, How's this? For the fixed signs, which is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this. And for the mutable signs, which is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, we have this. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed.